Um, Let me just wait to see.
Do you have a delay on this at all?
There shouldn't be. There
Okay.
shouldn't be, but it's okay.
I
Yeah,
just have it open on
yeah,
another
yeah, yeah.
screen, and it
It's
hasn't.
live now. It's live. It's live on mine at least.
Is it? I'll
My
refresh.
camera's flickering occasionally, but it's not an
Yeah.
issue. It's not an issue. It's live now.
Okay. Good.
Okay, yeah, definitely turn that sound off because I was
Yeah.
hearing that
No, I
feedback.
did.
Okay, awesome, awesome. I'll actually close that because I don't need to look at that. Okay, thank you everybody for coming along. Me and Najaf here, we're going to be having a discussion on essentially both of our solution for Rails when it comes to the fuel and how it's priced and all of that. I think the best place to start is actually to explain like what Rails is and what that idea originally was, which is that there's just like there's fuel is essentially pegged to a dollar value. Let's say $1 equals 100 fuel, whatever, and it's basically pegged at that price, but there's complete market freedom and it can fluctuate 25% above, 25% below, or something like that. So within those bounds, it can fluctuate. But then if it does hit the top ceiling or the bottom ceiling, then Illuvium essentially has to print or stop printing and basically actually do sort of market manipulation type moves to maintain those boundaries essentially. There are risks involved with this, I believe, and I think just one of those is just generally like people hate it when like in a games like somebody's messing with the numbers. For example, like in Axie Infinity and Steppen, I remember anytime they changed anything, the player base was furious. But yet they did those adjustments for the health of the project. So I think at
Yeah.
least I think that the best solution is one that like just doesn't have rails, so that like that just isn't a concern. Go for it, bro.
Yeah. I was gonna say Axie Infinity. I've said this a number of times. I was involved in that from the whole ride up in the bull market and down, and that's really what triggers me for this for a rail system in Illuvium, because I was in Axie,
Yeah,
and
same.
it was two AXS to
Same
breed,
as.
and then all of a sudden they make a change and it's four AXS to breed, and then
Yeah,
it's eight AXS, and then they drop it down to one, and then every time there's a change, somebody gets screwed.
yeah,
So I think Illuvium just needs to come up with a scalable model, and any model that involves Rails isn't scalable, because if it's scalable, then it doesn't need Rails. And also when it comes to that, like I'm the whole idea of being for or against Rails, it's not even really truly what we're talking about, because in the model that I think is best, Rails don't even need to be part of the system. So really, Rails don't need to be there if you have a scalable system.
yeah. I think there might be some solutions potentially for Rails to scale, but even like Aaron's actually said recently, that he actually doesn't think that Rails is actually the right solution. He's been talking with economists, etc. So basically, what we're going to be doing here, we both agree that there are better solutions than Rails that would be more scalable, and I think we both agree that the best solution is one where there is like no work having to be done by the team or anyone to make any adjustments along the way to maintain and to scale that system. It should be just sort of self explained, self-contained, and it can just carry on regardless of how many people demand, like regardless of demand, etc. We'll start off with Najaf going into his solution, and then we'll proceed into my own.
Yeah. So my solution would basically be let fuel, or let's if we're talking travel, we can talk Krypton. So let Krypton run on a free market and use Krypton to buy your ticket, your travel into the overworld. but the travel cost into the overworld is going to be pegged to, whatever US dollar value, the team comes up with. Obviously, in regardless of the system, the team or the council, everybody together needs to come up with a pegged price that they're going to work off of. So that's not, something exclusive to my plan. It's whatever that peg is that it's US dollars, but it's not pegged to Krypton. I don't think Krypton or any fuel should be a stable coin. I think you should have a free flowing market for the fuel and then just use that to purchase the travel ticket. So, for example, it just depends on the demand. If Krypton is sitting at, well, let's say travel is $1. If Krypton is sitting at $1 each, then it's only going to cost you 1 Krypton to buy that travel ticket. If Krypton's sitting at 10 cents a piece, then it's going to cost you 10 Krypton for that travel. And to me, I just don't see the point of having Krypton as a stable coin. If you're going to hold a stable coin, why wouldn't you just hold USDC,
Yeah. So to see if I've understood correctly, I'll try and reiterate that. So essentially, the price it costs to travel, that remains stationary. You're introducing a system where you can buy a ticket for travel, so that way, if you don't want to buy Krypton, hold it in case it fluctuates, you can essentially just go straight into buying travel tickets so that you can keep those.
Yeah. So one of
Yeah.
the concerns with my model when it was presented was that if you buy, say you wanted to buy enough Krypton so you can travel for the entire week. So say you want to be able to travel to 2 or 3 regions a day for a week, and you just want to buy that all at once. At first, how I presented it, if you bought that Krypton, you weren't guaranteed whether you would get the travel that you were anticipating. So that's why adding the ticket system allows you to either hold that Krypton to speculate whether demand is going to go up or down, or if you don't want to take that risk, you just buy the ticket and then hold the ticket, and the ticket will be the cost of whenever you make that purchase, but you won't have to actually go into the region until you use that ticket. So it kind of it helps, it helps both the speculators, the people who want to speculate on Krypton, and it also helps the people who don't want to take that risk at all.
So my question to you would be, obviously Krypton is for traveling, but beyond traveling, there's also the curing of shards. And beyond that, there's also, making armor, weapons, augments, all of that. And that process involves the other types of fuel. Does that mean that people then need to buy tickets for every single thing? And the other thing is like, some of that fuel, like let's say in the making of armor, whether you're making like a tier 1 armor or a tier 5 armor, that will have a different fuel cost. So I don't think it actually makes sense for people to not be able to just hold and rely on their fuel. And that would be my question to you. Should there be tickets for armor making, like basically a secondary stable coin that isn't that actual fuel? And why are we adding a second action for players to do? Because instead of them having to buy Krypton then buy travel, but like immediately buy that travel because they're like shaking that they might be a price fluctuation, why not just have a stable Krypton?
Well, that really gets into the whole issue I had in the first place. The whole ticket system was actually just something that I had added on to my original plan. The ticket system just solves the problem that we just talked about. My original idea for not having a stable Krypton, when you think about it, if you have fuel as a stable coin, and you are pegging your in-game purchase or your travel to a number of those stable coins, and your land can only produce a max amount of fuel, then all of a sudden that means somebody out there on the team or a council is determining what the value of your land is. You know, if you set it for travel is $1, 10 of those are Krypton, then you're saying that every Krypton is 10 cents. Say your land can only produce 100 Krypton per day, then you're saying your land, no matter how the demand fluctuates, is only producing $10 per day. Somebody's going to do that math and say, this is how much alluvium land should cost based on the numbers that the team made up. And if that number is too low and they can just stake USDC, why wouldn't they just stake USDC and get that same return? But when you put Krypton or fuel on a free market, then you have a reason for people to hold, because you'll have those those speculators who may think, if I buy the Krypton now, or if I hold the Krypton now and the demand goes up, then I'll be able to get more travel out of that Krypton. You know what I'm saying?
I understand your point. So the main concern I'm hearing is you as a landholder, and just generally as someone from the DAO, you care about the concerns of landholders, which I think is great. Like, you definitely should. But like from my side of it, I don't actually think that I agree, like, completely, that there should be nobody on the team just arbitrarily deciding how much landholders get. It's the thing where you say that each plot of land has a maximum amount of fuel that they can generate, and I don't believe so. At least in my own solution, that isn't the case. Instead, it just scales infinitely, so that, like, if for example, fuel is just pegged to the dollar. It's just like 1,000 fuel is worth $1 or something, right? Whatever. It's arbitrary exactly how it connects, but it's just pegged, and it's purely stable. Like, what is the issue if the amount of fuel that a landowner earns isn't stable? That's the bit that changes. So based on how much, like, revenue comes in, exactly 5% of that goes to the landowners in increase or decrease fuel supply based on demand. Could that not be also a solution?
Yeah, I do think that's a solution. I've definitely thought of that before. But that would also require changes to how Illuvium Zero works. Because if you look now, when you're playing Illuvium Zero, you upgrade your fuel extractor and say, okay, now it produces 2 Krypton per day. You upgrade it again, it's producing 5 Krypton per day. And then you hit that max of, okay, now maybe your fuel extractor is producing, say, 15 Krypton per day. But then when you start changing that, then that becomes a problem, because you're, as a landowner, you could wake up one day knowing your fuel extractor is supposed to be producing you 15 units of fuel, and now it's only producing 5 units of fuel. Like, how can you predict that as a landowner? You know, you should know, I just upgraded my extractor to its max level. It's going to produce me 15 units per day. Now, depending on the demand, that 15 units might be a different value, but, you know, how are you going to have that maxed Krypton extractor fluctuating on how much Krypton it's going to give you every day?
I mean, I don't think it's technically any different. So in my case, the amount of Krypton will fluctuate that you earn. You still need to upgrade your Krypton miner, because basically suddenly the meta game becomes, instead of like just waiting for the price and stuff, it actually becomes making your gameplay as efficient and consistent as possible. Because if you've got a completely efficient plot of land that you're running super smoothly, and somebody else has just abandoned theirs and isn't on it, the person that's abandoned it, they're just not getting any fuel, and you're actually taking that, essentially. So there's an entire pool, and that's still essentially the case currently. But like, whether the amount of Krypton that you get changes, or whether instead, I mean, equally, if the price, if the demand goes down by 3x, you're just gonna get a 3x like loss in price. It's like no different when it comes to what landowners are getting. It's just like, does that make sense?
Yeah, and like you were saying, that's not unique to what you were saying about how if somebody's playing their land, efficiently versus somebody who's not playing their land, that's not unique to your
No,
your
no, for
solution.
sure. It's
That
definitely
for
not.
for
That's
both
just the
solutions,
case. That's just the
that's the
case. Yeah,
same
yeah.
case.
No, of course.
But I just like, as a landowner, if I upgrade my fuel extractor and it says I'm going to be getting 15 units of fuel per
Yeah,
day,
but it's no
I
longer
want
going
to
to be
get that.
saying that. It's instead what it would say is you're going to increase your fuel production by X%, just generally. And you're just increasing by percentages until you reach the maximum, like open wide mouth receiving the gifts of the gods, you know?
I do see what you're saying. I think that just makes things complicated. I mean,
So
you could
so
argue it makes things complicated either
from
way.
my side, I think maybe that may be slightly confusing initially to some landowners. But like at the end of the day, I think what it's so from you're obviously seeing this much more from the lens of landowners. I'm seeing it much more from the lens of I want to make more money, and I think so do landowners, and I think it makes more money generally if it's less confusing for the player base, because the whole point of land is you're just there to absorb the revenue that Illuvium makes. So you want that game to do the best possible, because the more revenue that game generates, the more revenue you absorb. Now, from my side, your idea with the tickets, like, it's convoluted. I think there's too many layers. Instead, like, so let me lay out fully my idea. um my idea is essentially that the price of fuel should just be pegged to the USD. There should be no bars. There's complete freedom, and the way that that works is, um anyone that buys fuel buys it directly from the DAO. 100%. Land no longer like just makes fuel just to sell to people in that way. 100% of it is made by the DAO. So let's say I buy $1,000 worth of fuel. What the DAO then does is it holds my $1,000 and gives me the fuel. So it's basically holding that $1,000 in reserve to guarantee my fuel, so that if I want to come back and be like, I actually don't want this $1,000 worth of fuel, I want to sell it back to the DAO. You can do that. You can just sell and get your $1,000 back. So it's basically a stable coin. It's like a casino. When you go into the casino, you give them your $1,000. They give you $1,000 worth of chips, and they hold your $1,000. They don't do anything with it. They just hold it in reserve. And then you go into the casino, you go into Illuvium, and let's say I spend like $500 of that, and then I go back, and I get $500 back from the thing. So what happens when I spend my $500? But let's just say I've spent 1,000, because 1,000 is a nicer number. I've spent $1,000 worth of fuel. So the DAO, that fuel just gets burned. The DAO no longer needs to hold that $1,000 in reserve. And what it then does with that $1,000 is 95% of it, $950, they just go to the ILV stakers, and they're distributed as revenue distribution. And what happens with the other $50 is $50 worth of fuel, instead of getting burned, that just goes to the landowners, and that goes into the pool that landowners are collectively drawing upon and competing for maximum access to. Now, the reason why I think this system is amazing is that it's infinitely scalable. And the other thing that it does is, when you go into the casino, you buy your chips, you feel like this sense of just any game. Like when you go into a game, you buy in-game currency, you feel like you can hold on to these chips forever. Their value is never going to shift. Their value is never going to change. And I think gamers as a whole will find that, stabilizing. They'll find that reassuring. Whereas if there's any kind of fluctuations and complications there for the gamer side, I think gamers are far more fickle than investors. Whereas landowners, they've invested in this. It's essentially revenue distribution and an access to a gacha that can get you blueprints. And all power to you. I think it's still fun, but I think it's even more fun, instead of speculating on the value of Krypton, just to have more players accessible, like make the game accessible to maximum number of players, such that you just make more money. I don't know about you, but I think landowners want to make more money than less money. And I think my solution does so by just essentially making it, just simple for the players. And I think, this game is already like, it's got crypto, it's got NFTs, and I think it just needs to be maximally friendly to the Web2 player, so that if they do come to our game, they're not just like confused, And I think that market fluctuations and all these things, and it's still a free market. So the truth is, like, it says free market versus pegged. Both of our ideas are free market. In both of our cases, there is a free market on the way that people use currency. There's zero control from anyone like moving rails and any kind of adjustments. The difference is, I believe, that with my solution, it's just simple on the player side. It's intuitive for the user, which I think is key. And I think it's something that landowners would adjust to and actually benefit from in the long run, ultimately. Whereas I just find your solution to be overcomplicating and actually risking turning away some players, just because it's kind of it feels convoluted. Like, I get the solution for like having tickets to travel, but like my concern with that is, well, what about like curing shards? You're gonna make shard curing tickets, and like I think it's overcomplicated in a way that players just won't appreciate. And yeah, so that's my side.
Yeah, so I disagree with it being my idea being overcomplicated. I think both of these solutions are fine. I think it's just something that once a player starts doing, it'll just be second nature to them, and it won't be complicated at all. When it comes to, you were saying like you'd want the landowners to make the most money, like your system versus mine. In both of our systems, we know that 5% is going to the landowners and 95% is going to the DAO. So regardless of your system or my system, the landowners are still going to be getting the same amount.
They're getting the same split. What I'm arguing, and like as Ricky Tan's asking, how would I earn money as a landowner? Maybe I misunderstood. So as a landowner, you're just getting an increased number of fuel if more fuel gets spent. So every time someone spends $1,000 worth of fuel, the DAO would no longer be holding need to hold the $1,000 to maintain the peg of that. That currency's been burned. 5% of that just goes straight to the landowners. The reason I'm arguing that this actually ends up generating more money for landowners than your idea, yes, the split remains the same, but I think this will be just better for player retention and user acquisition. And I think the biggest challenge Illuvium is going to have is player retention and user acquisition, and any additional thing that makes the game seem more complicated, more crypto-like. I think that's a huge concern right now. We've spent a long time building this game, and I really don't want on launch it failing because we took the risk of having some experimental system of economy that didn't appear reliable to players, that seemed sketchy. And I think we're in a very sketchy place. Like 99.99% of the projects in our niche are scams. And that's a fact. Yeah. And we need to be different. And I think this is what has never been done, is an economy that actually looks like a Web 2 economy, but it in practice is a Web 3 economy. And I think we shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I think there's a lot of lessons for game making and the way games work in Web 2 that are super important. Those are 20, 30, 40 years of experience. And we're just throwing it all out and we're like, yeah, Web 3 is the way. This is the future. I'm not saying it's not the future. I'm saying we shouldn't throw out the knowledge. And I just don't think that gamers, I think you're speaking to an investor market, whereas the reason I feel I'm also speaking to investors is I'm like, whoa, guys, the way that you feel as an investor, shut the fuck up. No one cares about how you feel. You want to make money, that's all that matters. We need to care about how our player base is going to feel who aren't investors, because they are going to make you money. And that's all I care about. I care about us as investors making money. And the way to that is to like make the player experience just maximally, cut and dry, so that it's intuitive and there's no like complications.
Okay. Tell me if this sounds complicated to you.
Yeah.
You're a Web2 player and you're jumping into Illuvium.
Mm-hmm.
You see it costs $1 to travel to the stage 1 region. You pay $1 and you travel to the region. Is that complicated?
So my issue there is you're not buying the casino chips. You're just spending $1.
So here's my other issue with the casino chips. I've never gone to a casino, bought chips, played with them, and then took them home and held them for no reason. I just gave them right back to the casino, because if I'm going to hold on to a stablecoin, I'd rather hold USDC because it's safer than Krypton.
So but that's fine. That's absolutely. We don't actually care if people hold it or don't hold it. But I think what happens for it's about the psychology, right? The point is, when you go to the casino, when you buy those chips, what happens psychologically is you've actually spent your dollars. Your dollars are spent. I now have these chips to play with. It's there to play with. And you don't ever leave the casino. You never leave this casino because you're always in Illuvium. Like when you leave Illuvium, you don't leave Illuvium. Like you're still in the virtual world. You're still there. You could just leave your chips in the casino. They have a safety deposit box for you, just for you, because you're a VIP. That's essentially what the Illuvium equivalent is.
So what would give you what would make you want to buy and hold a bunch of Krypton?
Well, it doesn't actually matter. It doesn't matter if you want to buy and hold it. It doesn't actually. It doesn't matter if you want. Like in my system, we don't care. We don't care for people buying and holding.
But you've given that example of, I bought 1,000 Krypton.
Yeah,
when would anybody buy 1,000 Krypton?
Well,
give me a reason why somebody would buy 1,000 Krypton rather than buy 20 Krypton, spend it, because it's a stable coin. So I can just. And we're on IMX, so we're gas free. So why don't I just spend 20 and then spend another 20 whenever I want to spend it? Why would I ever want to buy in bulk?
So it just depends on your player style. Frankly, as far as the DAO is concerned, I don't care if you're doing it 20 at a time or if you're doing it all at once. It actually doesn't make any difference. You're still like, if your spending habits remain the same, as far as you're concerned, it makes no difference to what landowners get. Like, I don't see the point. Like, you no longer we don't actually need people to adopt fuel as a currency or to hold it. We need fuel to be spent to make money in this scenario, and that's essentially what people will do. And I think some people will buy 20 at a time based on what their means are. And I think somebody that's like a whale coming in and they're like, I can't be bothered. I can't be bothered doing a transaction every once in a while. I'll just buy 100. I'll buy 200. I'll buy $1,000. But it doesn't matter to us. We're not asking them to change their spending habits with what I'm proposing. I'm just saying it's simplified for them. Whether they want to hold, it doesn't really. I don't think it's neither here nor there, technically.
Yes, I think as a
I'm basically taking the speculation out of it, as Scuzz is saying.
And I agree.
Which is better for the average gamer, which is better for the revenue generated.
Yeah. But even with my model, for the average gamer, the average Web2 person who wants to come in and play, it doesn't affect them at all. Because you're saying hold the Krypton, I'm saying hold the tickets. They work the same way.
But how did so firstly, I don't. So suddenly in your system, right? The difference is that I am saying, okay, you buy your Krypton, and then whenever you want, you can travel with it. Mm-hmm. In your system, you have to buy the Krypton to buy tickets to then hold the tickets to travel anytime you want with them. And
it doesn't have to be multiple transactions, though.
Okay, it doesn't have to be multiple transactions. You can just buy the tickets directly. But what I'm saying is you've actually created. So in my one, it's just a stable of USD fuel. and in yours, you're also creating a USD stable, which is tickets or like credits, some special credits for crafting or for curing shards that are just not the actual fuel. But then suddenly, like nobody has a reason to ever hold fuel except for special speculation purposes. Suddenly,
That's
in
why
your
anybody
model,
would hold it.
huh?
That's why
Yeah.
anybody holds any asset.
Okay, but then suddenly, technically, fuel has as much real value as Pepe. And you have a completely speculative asset right in the heart of something that we want to be the future of Web3. This is how all games should do it. And I don't think that's attractive. I think that comes with strong risks. Some people who are unaware of like the dynamic, they may get hurt by this. They might come in one day, spend $50 on the game. They only spend like one or two of it actually traveling. They come back the next day and they've got half as many travels remaining.
So give me an example of how it could be like Pepe.
Well, so Pepe is just supply and demand. Like,
so you're saying somebody could buy up a lot of Krypton and hold it, right?
Sure.
So if you buy up a crap ton of Krypton and hold it, I can sell my Krypton for more. So,
okay.
That makes it
but
more
why does
valuable
this?
For me?
Yeah. I get that. That. But why? So you're willing to risk introducing something that is going to be less enjoyable, more confusing, harder to onboard new gamers, Web2 gamers,
which won't affect most players. It will only play a role for the landowners. And if you got to assume that if somebody's holding land, they probably understand crypto and understand risks, and understand supply and demand. The Web2 players are unaffected by this.
So my main concern, I understand. I would rather prioritize safety, low risk of my idea, and just take away this speculation, because I think it's unnecessary. It doesn't add any true value to the economy, to how anything works. And it adds potential, just like optics, PR risk, potentially people getting hurt, whatever. Like, I don't need that risk in a game that's already a risk. And like, I care more about making all of us stable money than giving degenerate gamblers another way to gamble. Like, I don't care for giving I don't care about the gamblers. I care about the investors who are here to actually make money and make as much money as possible. So like, I'm not here to give a new roulette wheel to people.
Yeah. Give me an example of how my system could hurt an investor.
Yeah, so I've given several. I can reiterate them.
Yeah.
So one, some people come in, they buy the fuel because of a misunderstanding or whatever.
Okay, so misunderstanding is what you're going off of.
No. That's one thing. That's one thing. Secondly, no misunderstanding. A user comes in, they're complete. So somebody else comes in, they're completely clear, they've completely educated, that problem solved. It's clear, it's simple. But then suddenly, like, you've got this complication. Like, there's just more options. I think it's added complexity that gamers aren't going to like.
How it's going to hurt somebody. Give me like a straight example of like, okay, how is this going to hurt somebody?
Okay, but what, like, you know that your argument is, let's do exactly what Vetemore's saying, but let's also, in addition to that, let's have his one is like another layer abstracted from the original fuel, and just let that fuel just be like a gambling zone. Like, why do you really want that? Landowners don't care about that, I don't think.
What I'm saying is, you get an option. With my system, you can have that option to play in your system, or you can have the option to speculate on it.
But why are you creating this additional option when it provides no value to the ecosystem?
It doesn't take value away from the ecosystem. Anyone holding the coin is only going to increase its value.
Frankly, I think it has branding concerns. I just don't think this is what Illuvium stands for. I think the people that this benefits is frankly nobody, because I think this is a potential just risk where we're creating a hole for gamblers to lose their money and hate our project.
Give me an
And we
example of
want
how
people.
somebody's going to lose their money. I just want to hear an actual like example.
Okay, so I have a gambling issue, but I really want to play Illuvium. I start playing Illuvium and I notice, oh, there's this like fuel thing where you could just like bet money, hold it, and see what happens. And you know, maybe somebody just gets wrecked with their life savings on that because they're like, okay, we're going to the moon. Like you've created the entire experience of Pepe within a system that just is completely stable in all other ways. And
Again,
that creates the risk of people having massive wins and also massive wrecks potentially. And I just don't think we need that risk.
In this example that you just said, the
Yeah.
first thing you started off with is I have a gambling issue. So we're always going to either somebody's uneducated or somebody has an issue. I just want an example of how.
Yeah, but I don't. No, but do you understand how many people have gambling issues and how our platform will be labeled as a gambling platform? This makes it unchild friendly. Do you understand the optics, the marketing that inflicts upon our brand? Like
that's what
that inflicts my bottom line. That inflicts revenue, as far as I'm concerned. Just so that we can give like Illuvium doesn't even benefit from your speculation. Illuvium gets no benefit from this speculation. This benefits Illuvium and long-term investors in no way. It just provides a Pepe coin like gameplay mechanic for gamblers. That zero value to invest to stakers, zero value to landholders. The only value it provides is to people that want to degenerately speculate and to gamble. And I don't think that has anything to do with what Illuvium is about. I want to keep that the visual optics far away from the brand of Illuvium. I don't think it's what we want. So I know that Kieran's a fan of degeneracy, but like I still don't like. I think he would agree here, frankly. Like I don't think it's a good look
for somebody to hold the fuel.
But why do you need there to be a reason for them to hold it?
Okay, so is there a reason for somebody to hold an alluvial?
Yes, there is.
Okay, so because it increases value. So there's the same reason people would want to hold fuel.
Well, I don't think that's the value of holding an alluvial, sir. I think the value of holding an alluvial is the fact that you're emotionally attached to it and the fact that you can utilize it and it has utility in the game. The only utility that fuel has is that you can spend it to travel. That's the only utility it needs to have. It doesn't need to have also the utility of potentially this could wreck you or make you rich. Like we want to disassociate with crypto in that way, because all crypto is nowadays is pump and dump scams, and this associates us with that culture. And I think Web3 culture, 99% of it is cancer, and I think 1% is building shit that's the future of finance and the future of just the way that things work. And I want us to be part of that 1%. I don't want us being exposed to any optics that connect us with scammy behavior, with just bullshit. And gamers especially are super sensitive to that. They will boycott a game just because of shit like this. And I just don't think we need these barriers. I don't think we need any like added risk to a narrative that could actually be super bullish and just be like, you know what, you can come and play. And it's the same as any Web2 game, except you own your assets. And that's it. That's it. Why on top of that? Oh, but you can also, there's also a Pepe thing and like that, like it skitzes people out mentally. And I think that's important. I think that's important.
But that's part of like holding any crypto. Let's just take Illuvitars, for example, right now. A lot of people are buying Illuvitars with SILV2, right? And it's pegged to ETH. So there are people speculating on buying SILV2 and then the value of ILV, how it compares to Ethereum. At one point, you could buy SILV2 and essentially buy a disk for, I don't know, like $6 and now it costs close to $10. It's the same concept.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. And the reason I have no problem with that is because nothing in the game will ever say the words SILV2. SILV2 is a financial product that 100% of the time is only used by investors. Now, if a gamer finds out about that and then they want to engage in that aspect, that's actually it's disconnected from Illuvium. It's not within the direct ecosystem. It's actually external to the ecosystem. It's on a second layer and this whole thing, and it's a separate thing. I think it's a completely separate case. I see your point though, and I think it's fine. I think it's fine.
Okay. And just like I was saying with SILV2, I know you're saying it's technically out of the system, but that's just like any other coin.
But SILV2, it has no volatility. It can't become a meme coin because its in-game value is pegged to the value of ILV, and that will maintain permanently. So instead of a USD stablecoin, it's just an ILV stablecoin as far as the game is concerned. That's why it's not a Pepe. It has direct, clear value. Its boundaries are very clear. That's why it's never speculated to be above the value of ILV, and it's never going to.
Well, you're right. It never will. But it could.
I mean, unless Krypton, one day, a bunch of it's burned. There's 10 tokens left in the world, and they've just become a collector's item. Whatever, sure, maybe.
Yeah, or some Wall Street bets group decides to go. I'm just saying it's possible.
But it's not an issue. I'm saying that's not an issue. That's completely separate from the rest of our ecosystem, and it's not directly with. I'm not saying it's not possible. I'm saying it's outside of our ecosystem as far as within the game is concerned.
So we have the opposite thoughts on Krypton. You're saying it's possible and could happen. I'm saying it's possible, but it's very unlikely that that's going to happen.
No, I'm saying that's very I'm saying it's possible that it happens to SILV2. I'm not saying anything about Krypton.
No, well, you were saying that people could pump and dump Krypton.
I was talking about SILV2 the whole time. It's for the last 2 minutes, I've been talking about SILV2.
Okay, so you don't think that people can speculate on Krypton?
People can speculate on Krypton, but that's unlike SILV2. It's in the heart of our ecosystem. That's the whole, I don't. What,
but why
do you want to speculate so badly? What benefit does this add to landholders? Because I think it matters what landholders are receiving and what investors are receiving. And I don't see this adding any because this adds no additional reliable revenue to them. All it means is that the value that their lands produce could actually potentially fluctuate even more. Instead of receiving the flat 5%, they receive a flat 5% in the form of fuel. And unless they're immediately selling that for Ethereum, the value of that is then constantly fluctuating, which some may be into, but with no bars, it can just go to nothing. And I don't know. I think the main thing that you're desiring from this is you want your plot of land. You want at the very start of the game. You're the first one that owns land. You're one of them. You're producing fuel. You just hold that fuel. You hope that we're at the bottom of a pyramid scheme, of an Axie style pyramid scheme. You're hoping loads of people pile in. There's this stupid demand for your fuel, and then you can actually just bang 100x on that fuel or 10x, and you can get some upside. But that's gonna hurt people. We don't need that risk associated with our game. So I don't think it's relevant, and
we always
because
talk
there's.
We always talk about knowing your demographic, right?
Yeah,
so when it comes to the overworld, we're saying we want it to be simple, easy, consistent for them. Look at the people who are buying land. Why would anybody buy land? It's because they want to produce value out of it.
Yeah, that's fine. They're going to be producing that 5%. And that 5%, the amount that is increased by maximizing the gameplay and the simplicity and the attractiveness of this game to the Web2 marketplace. There's a lot of players that spend a lot of money in Web2. And we have access to none of them right now. Everyone in Web3 gaming already knows us.
Where's the metagame and where's the strategy for the landholders of when they're going to sell their fuel or not? If it just comes down to a stable coin, hold it, sell it, whenever. You're always going to make the same.
Well, suddenly
Landowners are your investors in this ecosystem.
Yeah.
So let them invest and speculate on price.
Well,
that doesn't need to affect overworld players.
But it does.
But it doesn't.
So we disagree.
If I'm an overworld player and I want to pay $1 to travel, anytime I want, I can come in and pay $1 to travel, whether Krypton is $100 per unit or a penny per unit. As an overworld player, I come in, I pay my $1 to travel. So they are not affected.
But suddenly, I'm just using USD in this entire system. That's just not gamified. There's no in-game currency. You want to disassociate people from their dollars. You want them to buy an in-game currency. Forget about it. You want them to just buy their in-game currency and just be like, yeah, that's that. I've spent that. They're never gonna sell that. Whereas if they have a bunch of USD, they're like, oh, this is actually USD. I can just keep this. You know, I don't need people having that. I want people to buy the casino chips and forget about them because they've spent their dollars. They've disassociated from that. It's about the psychology. I think we disagree on the approaches. But like, I think that what I'm saying benefits financially landowners more, just because I think the increased volume of players is more than the potential upside from speculation. And there's also potential downside from speculation. Maybe it goes up, maybe you hold, and like maybe it just goes right back down again and you didn't benefit from that. I don't think all landholders are interested in that mechanic. I think generally people are more interested in making more money and for it to be consistent. If they want to be a bit more risky, they can buy the gacha that's on their land and they can, gamble to get some fuel. There's other places to gamble in our ecosystem, frankly. And I just think that I think the metagame is something that I'm willing to sacrifice if it gets landowners and stakers more revenue in the long run. And it's something I'm willing to sacrifice if it gets more players into our ecosystem. And I think that's my conclusion, honestly.
All right. So I still disagree, but instead of going just...
So you don't care about our players? Do you not care about like how this game is perceived by players? No. Or do you just want to just completely be ignorant to how that might look and how that plays out? Like what? Because you just really want this almost like sounds like it's just you want to benefit from this in a really like I don't get it.
I'm looking at the players or the people who are playing both of these games. I think we agree on the overworld. We want the overworld players, the Web 2 gamers, to come in, have a seamless transaction, know the consistent price that they're going to pay to get in and play the game. We can agree on that, and both of our systems work that same way. I'm giving the option that if you're buying land, you're speculating on the price of land, you're speculating on how much it can produce, because that's what those people are doing. If you just want to play land and you don't care about like speculating in any way, then you wouldn't have bought a plot of land in the first place. I'm giving an option to speculation, but also the option to not have to speculate. Why not have more options? So they don't have to affect each other.
But there's already so many options for speculation within our ecosystem. I love the idea of a currency that's just reliable, a complete stable coin, as any in-game currency is. Like in RuneScape, the value of the coin doesn't change. In World of Warcraft, like the value of the coin doesn't change. That's the one constant thing. And then you speculate on everything else using the currency that is essentially a dollar abstraction, an abstraction of the dollar that is in game, that is just like casino style. And that's the point. That's the point. You want people speculating within the gallery that there is to speculate, but you want their currency to be stable, reliable, and that's great. I just think that's fine. I mean, you can make the point as well that obviously a lot of that speculation will be done in USD or ETH because, secondary market will be in that. But regardless, I really love the idea of this just simple consistency that just like players come in and there's nothing that looks sketchy. There's nothing that requires education, because when you go into games, when you go into games nowadays, what you experience is almost no need for education because everything is intuitive. And I just want there to be zero news articles that say this person got wrecked by, or like Illuvium, the secret gambling ring for children. Like, I don't need any of that. I just don't want any of that shit. I just don't want to be anywhere near it. I don't think it's good press.
Yeah,
But,
so
like, we
we're
can agree
definitely
to
not
disagree
gonna
there.
we're not gonna come to an agreement on this.
No, we're not.
But I definitely don't appreciate you saying that I don't care about the gamers, because I care about the gamers in both sides of the gamers. I care about the people who want to come in and invest in a game like this, and I also care about the Web 2 gamers that we're going to get, and we want it to be a consistent, seamless transaction. So I'd argue that I care more about the diversity of the players here than just looking at one side of the players.
I think Web3 players will equally benefit from this. I think the majority of the Web3 player base won't mind either way, but I think there is a contingent of Web2 players that will find this a red flag and a turnoff. And for that reason, like, I don't think we're turning off anyone by going my route. And I think there is a genuine risk that we do not require to have as a risk with going your path. And I just don't see the upside to that risk. I don't see the upside, whereas you feel that upside is very high and that the risk is very low. And I think that's ultimately the place that we've come to. I don't think there's much more for us to debate. I'm very curious to see what all of the other strategy candidates say. I'm curious to see what the community ultimately thinks about this discussion. It's been, thank you definitely, like, for having this with me.
Yeah, definitely. I was just, before we get off of here.
Yeah.
The chat's been going through here, and I haven't really been paying attention much. So, are there any questions in this chat that we can kind of like touch on?
I'm down to spend like 15-20 minutes or however.
Yeah, I mean, I'm good.
I've got no time.
I gotta wake up for work in a little bit, but all good. So yeah, I mean, are there any questions in here that anyone wants to ask?
Blictor's just having a chat with S-Jud there. That's a bit of fun. Yeah, if anyone has any specific questions, we down. We can see them from everywhere, right? Does Fettermore want alluvials to be speculative? Well, I believe in their nature, they are to some extent speculative. I think. What does your shirt say? Wenland. This is actually old school Scoriox merch. Yeah. But yeah, I think when you buy alluvials in the game from the overworld, I think while set 1 is still out there, there's not going to be like that much speculation on their value. I think it's the moment, like their prices will fluctuate, like market conditions, whatever, supply and demand, etc. But I think for the most part, like once that set is over, like in the long term, like those old school Pokemon cards, there can be, strong speculation into the future of that.
I think speculation might happen right away. I mean, we saw a hollow
I think it will
Ramfire
definitely happen right away.
There'll
definitely be some extent of speculation. I just think it gets like more sort of potentially wild.
The way I see it, with you saying like people could get wrecked, it just comes down to alluvials like this too. You could speculate on an alluvial and get wrecked just like you could speculate on fuel. I think even though we want to make this seamless for those Web 2 players to come in, we do have to realize that this is a Web 3 game and there is going to be speculation. The whole idea of true ownership gives that potential for speculation. Like, I think we should embrace that, not lock ourselves to it, but embrace it.
Yeah, I think we do if we just have a stable currency. I just don't think that's something that needs to be we just disagree on this fundamental point, like, and that's fine. I think that's fine. I'm genuinely curious to see what other people think. The other thing that's important to note is we've obviously not discussed either of our ideas with the team. Who knows if mine or yours are actually executable? I suspect that both are technically. I think Blictor or somebody actually mentioned that my idea with the pegging to USD might have like potential regulatory concerns, as that rather than it being a liquidity pool, that actually means that they've got to like basically manage a stable coin, that actually just, who knows, maybe my idea is just a total no-go. So that's another thing.
And one thing I do want to say is I do have to give you credit, because less than a week ago you were saying you were all for Rails, and you've made an adjustment because we realizing that Rails is not a good option. So when it comes to voting onto this council, like, I think you do need people who need to be willing to change their opinion when new information is presented. So I give you credit for that, even though we still don't agree on the solution. I think we did find an agreement that we don't think there should be Rails.
Yeah, so to sort of just respond to that a little bit, so the main reason I said that I prefer Rails was compared to your idea, like your original idea, the way you sort of said it in that, like Rails to me sounded like the thing that gamers would have less of an issue with. The more you then continue discussing it on Twitter, we sort of spoke about it, and the more I thought about it, the more I sort of realized, like, actually, like, this is actually like that. I actually understood why you desired free market, that there's that concern of, and it's not so much like not trusting the team as it is like, or not trusting like the council members that might be managing that with votes or whatever. It's just the risk that creates, because changes can happen for the right reasons, but generally when they're done on like something like Rails, any of those changes will, as you said earlier, they'll hurt somebody. They'll benefit somebody, they'll hurt somebody else, and it's a nightmare. And I think it's actually something to avoid. I obviously then came up with a solution that is different than yours, and I think this has been a great debate. Have there been any other questions?
I think they're just chatting back and forth with each other.
I think we went through the whole darn thing. This is solid.
Yeah, no, that's pretty good. And I mean, once I get off of this, I'm going to bed for the night. But I'll be back on Twitter if anyone's chatting in any threads about this, and I'll answer any questions or give my thoughts whenever I wake up in the morning.
100%. Also, if anybody is here and just curious, like, what did happen on Twitter? Where did all this start? There's like 4 different links to 4 different tweets. 2 that I gave for some context, 2 that Najaf gave. If you guys just want to see more of Najaf generally, his YouTube channel and Twitter are both linked in the bio. In the description. You should follow him on both, because like, dude's got passion. I really respect that we're like both out here discussing this. And I just respect the passion, because I think this is the kind of shit we need. Like, people that are willing to just put themselves out there, say an idea, and at the end of the day, like, if it turns out my idea is shit or your idea is shit, I'm sure that we'll just move on. At the end of the day, it's not about us or our idea. It's about what ends up being best for the DAO, and I think that's what we're going to be discussing in this sub-council, right?
Yeah, I agree. And even from just a week ago, like I said, you've learned more information. You've made some adjustments. I've learned new things. I've made some adjustments to what I thought was the best model, and that's what we need. We need different opinions coming together to find the same solution. And if we both happen to be on this council, I think in time we will come up with a solution that would be best for everybody.
Yep, I agree. And honestly, the strategy sub-council has just all-round really strong candidates, and I'm certain that whoever is elected, they'll come to the best decision for the community and for the DAO as a whole. Yeah.
Agreed.
Shall we leave it there?
I think we're good, unless there's any questions.
I think we rounded her off. Yeah. Awesome. I might go check and see if the game sub-council things come out. Yeah, because they recorded that.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I gotta check them out. Yeah, I gotta get to bed anyways. So thanks for setting this up, doing this live stream. Hopefully the viewers found it entertaining or educational. We'll
Yeah,
see.
definitely say your opinions in the comments down below. Discuss it over at Twitter. In the Illuvium Discord, there's a link to the Discord in the description as well. Take care, everybody. I'm Vetamore. He's Najaf. And fuck me.
It's been a while. Huh?
Adding your name just confused my brain so much. I'm Vetamore. You're the future, and I'll be seeing you guys there.